Yeah.
We'll add it with the second item.
Can we amend it?
We'll factor
No,
that
that's
in.
fine. We'll just factor it into the planning department.
Planning department projects.
Yeah.
Uh, well, this is going to be Michael.
Don't what?
Oh, we
You don't have to do it?
Yeah,
That's fine.
That's true. It's not on
Okay.
there.
because Michael's going to talk about this. So it's going to seem. Okay.
All right, folks. I'm Brian Hanson, the chair of the B.V.A.C. I'm going to call this meeting to order. It's now 6:04 on August 14th. If we could, let's see. Yeah, let's call this meeting to order. I don't need a motion. Do we have a roll call?
When I call your name, indicate for the record that you are present. Brian Hansen,
Here.
Joy Merleys,
Here.
Flamin McLeod, Meg Linkford. There are 3 council members present, constituting a quorum. We can proceed with the meeting. The minutes of the previous meeting have been distributed. Are there any corrections or additions to the minutes?
I approve.
If there are no,
To approve the minutes from July 10th.
okay, the minutes were approved.
Great. We don't need a second on that. Let's move right along to agenda items.
So the planning department projects, I was supposed to bring a handout with all of the list. We can send that out to the community members through the Big Valley Area Council email. There's not a whole lot of planning projects going on in Kelseyville, but we'll get that out to everybody. My bad for not bringing it. Narrated, do you want to add anything?
But I'm here in case anybody has any questions about development in Kelseyville or anywhere in the county.
Thank you.
All right, with none, then we'll move on. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. We'll move on to the next agenda item, the Project 2050 updates.
Thank you. This month, the month of August, we are focused on the second survey cycle. It started August 5th. It'll go through the end of Lake County Fair, so I think September 3rd. Well, maybe the day after that, after it's closed and done. The second survey gleans or attempts to glean additional information and details on the key issues that arose during the first survey. It's longer. If you remember taking the first community survey, it was about maybe like a page or 2. This one's a little chunky because we really want to know what you think about specific items. I have lots of copies here that you are welcome to take. You can just give me a call and I'll come get them, or you can mail them to our office. You can scan them and email them in. We'll take them any way we can get them. But this would be very, very helpful as we are starting to prepare and schedule meetings for our LAPACs, our local area plan advisory committees. They're going to be taking information that comes from this survey as well as the first survey. And the first survey key issues are also on the table there in the yellow that I'm going to leave here. And they'll be discussing what's risen to the top as the key issues for the Kelseyville planning area in order to find consensus that will then be reflected in the draft area plans. I also have our cards with the QR code. I will leave these as well. Please feel free to pass them out far and wide so that most people, if they have interest, that they're willing to take the survey, they can just go ahead and zoom in on that QR code, go straight to our website, the lakecounty2050.org website. And right there in this long, or this broad yellow banner, it says, take the second survey now. They just click on that, and then it'll take you to the page where you select the planning area, because we have all 8 planning area surveys, and they're all somewhat different. And then that person can start taking that survey. It would be extremely important information. This is where we're really counting on people's willingness to take a little extra time. If you read something or you get to a topic that you don't care about, like local area plan boundary and land use map changes, who cares about that? Skip it. Just keep going. It's important to get your information or your input on the stuff that you think is important. Then at the end of every survey, we actually have some standardized questions for the Housing Action and Implementation Plan. This is a project that we've sort of joined in together with Lake County 2050 so that we don't burn y'all out on giving us your input. So we're combining data in order into just one single survey. So if you make it through this, I won't bug you until a little while. You'll have some time off. But anyway, I appreciate it. Appreciate your time and your interest and your willingness to tell us exactly what you think is important for our community. Yes, ma'am. Please. Was it the map question?
Sharon,
Because
I
Joy
printed-
is a
I
fearless
printed,
leader, and she came
maps for
prepared.
you. There should be one at your table. Here, I'll bring them.
Introduce myself. I'm Sharon Zoller. I'm from Kelseyville. My question is about the question on the survey regarding the boundaries. And it's not whether or not we should change the boundaries, but the question is, what was the thought behind asking the question? Why do we not want this one section, this section, or this section? There were 3 sections for the Kelseyville to be either added or subtracted. Was there a reason for each of those areas? I've had several people who I have pushed the survey out to say, I don't know, why are they asking, should we have this section added or not, this section added or not, or this section added or not? And conversely, Lakeport is asked the question about the 2 sections that border Lakeport, and Cobb is asked about the section that's part of Cobb. It's not good or bad. It's just understanding the rationale behind asking. Is there a plus or a minus for whatever you choose?
Very good question. I'm happy to go through the picture, which is kind of tiny and hard to read on an 8.5 by 11 size. Last week when we had our in-person workshops, we had big wall size pictures. And so then it was a little easier. And actually also when we have the LAPAC meeting that focuses on planning area boundaries, like this specific map, we're gonna have that meeting in person so we can all look at very big maps. So if you take a look, let's start at the top one. See, if you see that pointy part right there's that magenta sort of slice that goes over on Soda Bay and then up Reeves Road. That portion, I think I'm about 99% sure that suggestion rose to the key issues from the Kelseyville community meeting. And that was to put the Rancheria, people were thinking the Rancheria just feels more like Lakeport. So that slice moves Rancheria into the Lakeport planning area. If you go slightly south, then you'll see that rectangle. That part also I think came from Lakeport, and it is slicing out the Lamson Field, which felt like also it was Lakeport. So this would take Lamson Field and put it in the Lakeport planning area. Then if you look down at the bottom, this request, that southeast portion, that green line that goes right across the word Cobb Mountain, this came from the Cobb planning area. They were thinking that part kind of feels more like Kelseyville. Let's draw our boundaries back so that it's more concentrated in just Cobb. So that's where all of those came from. And in fact, when we schedule our LAPAC planning meetings, when we have areas such as this that suggestions may have come from a separate planning area, I'm going to group those LAPAC meetings together where possible so that everybody can be in the same room to have the same conversation. There you go. That concludes my response. Is there any other question? My pleasure.
Thank you, Maria.
All right, thanks.
We'll move right along. Okay, we're going to move right along to the next agenda item, the discussion and possible action on proposed allocation not to exceed $65,000 for Highland Springs Recreation Area, master plan, and facility repairs. I know we have Supervisor Green in-house tonight. That would, if you could just take the microphone and we'll discuss that for a minute.
Thank you. I brought agenda materials for you guys. There's some extras there. Basically, I'll be reading off what is very unofficial at this point, a draft memorandum that I hope to bring to the board in September. And this part we'll be talking about is on the second page of that. It's actually on the back page. Just as background, you probably heard of discretionary cannabis revenues that we get through our permit program and the cannabis taxes that were approved by Measure C and Measure K. So some slice of those revenues can be allocated by individual supervisors. I've been working on this since Supervisor Scott before me because she had done a discretionary allocation in the Scotts Valley area for a brush clearing project for a big chunk of money, $165,000. But as it turns out, there were some procedural issues with that did need to come to the board for full approval. Once I got involved, the project as it had been originally scoped had hit some roadblocks, which aren't really important now. In May of 2023, a full year ago at this point, I brought this item to the board, and the board at that time gave direction to Water Resources staff to scope some alternatives to the original brush clearing project. Here we are a year later, and it's nobody's really fault for that. Water Resources, like many of our departments, is short-staffed and has gone through some organizational changes since then. But I still have an allocation that's just sitting there that I hope to get spent. To me, the delay has actually turned out to be a good thing because Water Resources, they are like the ninjas of grant funding. So some of the original needs that were outlined last year by Water Resources for the Scotts Valley region have since been funded. You know, they either found grant funding, they got a larger study addressing not just Scotts Valley, but other watersheds in Lake County. So of the 3 bullet points that the board directed Water Resources staff to explore last year, 2 of them are fully funded. The third one has been deemed funded by non-county sources, and that involves stream gauge measurements and stuff like that. So here we still have a big pot of money, but what staff did come up with, having taken a fresh look at this, saying, you know what, this is fully funded, we don't really need this. What do you think about this? So what's before us today is a staff-generated proposal for the Scotts Valley area. In particular, a key concern of them is flooding. So 100 of the 165K allocation would stay in Scotts Valley to fund a flood risk reduction study. But on page 2 of this memo, what you'll see, what staff suggested is, let's take a look at Highland Springs. Because this is, it's a fascinating, large, important, vital recreation area, but it kind of falls into the gray area. You know, it's under Water Resources responsibility, but guess what? Parks is not a traditional function of Water Resources, right? So we have the developed park area down by the picnic area, we have the disc golf course, we have many equestrian trails, and but as far as Water Resources' ongoing ability to staff and improve the park-related functions of Highland Springs, it's just been kind of a who's on first kind of thing. So the proposal that they're hoping to bring forward, and hopefully we'll get some buy-in today, would say let's take 65,000 of that allocation and let's pony up a master plan for Highland Springs. And so what's our master plan? So one reason this may have some synergy is a couple things. As Ms. Sullivan knows well, there is a master plan of sorts from 2011, but this was all generated by basically equestrian stakeholders. This is not an official document, it's not a county document, and as helpful as it is, it is, guess what, kind of equestrian-centered and not necessarily as helpful for disc golf and some of the other park functions. Two, in this particular form, it's not going to be as helpful in, because once you have a master plan, what you want is funding and projects to kind of fall under that master plan. So a couple things, the stars did align. So some of you have some excerpts from our much larger Parks, Recreation, and Trails Master Plan that came to the board for approval just a couple months ago. And there's some excerpts there. If you want to see the full-blown document, it is still posted online at lakecountyprt.com, and you can download the full plan as it's been approved. And it does mention Highland Springs in there, but it's, again, it's just kind of the briefest of things, and it notes that unlike all the other county parks and facilities that fall under the Parks Division of our Public Services Department, Highland Springs does operate solely under the jurisdiction of Water Resources right now. And so depending on the user group, whether it's equestrians, disc golfers, picnickers down at the picnic area, people who use the gun range, they have all their own different interests and ideas of what should happen there, but what they haven't had the opportunity to do is really participate in a robust local master planning process for Highland Springs. So this document, again, lakecountyprt.com, if you want to see like the 30,000-foot view of parks and trails in the county, that's a really good resource. And the excerpts I highlighted here, because there's only just a couple pages, one of the goals does suggest evaluate reorganizing the management of the Parks, Recreation, and Trails components of Highland Springs to be under the management of Public Services. So that's one deliverable we think a master plan should definitely take a look at. There's another recommendation in the Lake County PRT about an equestrian center, and that could be under the county umbrella, that could be driven by private stakeholders. There's a lot going on in that in terms of where that may land and whether that would be kind of a city, county, or privately driven effort. So stay tuned on that. But the master plan would incorporate comments received on that particular idea and how that might fit into Highland Springs as well. I did bring some copies, and I know Ms. Sullivan is familiar with this document, so if you want to grab one of these to see, this would basically be a really great starting point as a resource for a master plan, should we let out a contract for that. And before I went out the door today, Angela DePalmadow from Water Resources said, "Take these." So she apologizes. She's getting ready for our Clear Lake Integrated Science Symposium for the next 2 days out at Robinson Rancheria. And Dr. Apadaway, who is our new Water Resources Director, had another time commitment. So neither one of them were available to present this today. I'm just filling in my own kind of loose way. So that's kind of the idea, the agenda item itself, and you're new, so probably you haven't had people come to you for your buy-in on projects, but that's kind of a normal pattern to our municipal advisory councils. Hey, what do you think about this idea? And again, it's just an advisory thing. It's a recommendation because this is a twofer. I'm hoping to take this similar thing and go to my Scotch Valley Community Advisory Council in a couple weeks and say, sorry about the $65,000, but I got you a $100,000 flood study if you guys approve it. And by the way, Water Resources hooked you up on these other projects that you also found were important. So I think they'll be in their happy spot, or at least I hope so. And in this instance, I come bearing gifts, or Water Resources comes bearing gifts, and that's basically it in a nutshell. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. I'll answer the best I can, but really the proposed action would be to recommend, not recommend, or recommend with suggested changes, so that when it does come to the Board of Supervisors, we can accommodate your input. And if I said anything wrong and all that, Supervisor Pyska, I'll defer to you on that. But it's basically a process thing.
All right, thank you. If you could just introduce yourself and where you're from and speak into the microphone if you have any questions.
Hi, my name is Tom Lasik, and I'm real excited about this Highland Springs master plan. I actually live on the back end of where the park is, and so every day I have to drive through the park. So I really just have a question. How from what you're proposing, and I'm sorry, we just found out about it in the last 24 hours, how can we get involved? Because I'm probably in that park every day more than everybody here combined, because I have to drive through it all the time. So I'm very interested. I love the park. So what is I just, as a question, how can we get involved? What's the idea behind that?
All right, thanks, Tom.
Well, just like the big master plan we just did, a lot of what we're paying for is getting that community engagement, right? Let's hold those stakeholder meetings. Let's find opportunities, not just to have stakeholder meetings, like in-person meetings, open a public comment period. For example, when they get closer to proposing a draft management plan or a master plan, they would circulate that just like they circulated this big old document. So there were a series of stakeholder meetings. They developed the draft from that. Once the draft was ready to rock and roll, they released it for additional public comment. We did have an additional public hearing at the Board of Soups. I forget if it went to Planning Commission. So that's the basic structure of a master plan is there's a lot here to process. Let's draw up some maps. Let's take some meetings. Let's get that informal feedback. Let's put it in a structured document, and let's bring that structured document back. For example, the bullet point, should operations and management be shifted to a different county department? And if so, what would that look like? Would it be an MOU with Water Resources, since they still have primary land use authority over the larger watershed? And so that, I think there would be multiple touch points for stakeholder involvement. We're very early in this. What would happen if the board does sign off and grants the funding in the respective spaces is Water Resources would then have formal board direction to go back and put out a request for proposals. And depending on who wins that bid, that company or consultant most likely would conduct that public outreach and incorporate that public input into the draft document. So most likely the deliverable will be a contract of sorts to a consultant. Does that answer your question?
Almost. So would it be committees that we were willing to volunteer for or anything like that help with the plan, or is that just a certain group that does that?
I think the consultant would handle drafting of the plan, and just like 2050, right? In that case, the big general plan rewrite and the area plan rewrites, in that particular thing, it's so big, they did form separate committees to provide input. This is a small contract. I can't see spinning up a committee just to provide that, but I think a series of stakeholder meetings with equestrians, disc golf owners, shooting range operators, and then people that use the picnic areas. So there's a lot of different touch points. So I guess it could be conceivably form a committee, but I would say for this smaller contract, probably not. And by the way, we have lots of committees in the county right now. So again, we have Big Valley Advisory, we have the local plan area committees. So maybe they can leverage those to get citizen input through those.
Could you repeat the
Yeah, I was
question?
gonna say, if you could just,
The
Stand
question is, could it be generated in-house by Water Resources staff? I don't want to speak for them. I would say that would not be the typical mode of operation. We would typically contract those things out. They're very good at what they do, but master planning and creating stuff like this is kind of a niche thing and involves activities that generally fall outside that. So what they're really good at is finding funding, letting contracts. That's what they're really, really good at. So I'm not saying never say never. I did write in there that again, if because they are the grant ninjas, For example, if they have to do the full allocation of $65K to pay for the consultant contract, that's cool. If they find a grant to cover that and there are unmet needs within Highland Springs that need our immediate attention, then it would free up those discretionary monies to be used for that while the grant money goes to the master plan. So it's really hard to follow the bouncing ball. Water Resources, unlike many other county departments, gets no general fund support. So they are literally going hand to mouth, grant to grant, and it's hard between the worker bees and the fiscal managers to keep the eye on all those balls. So that's one reason it's taken close to 2 years for me to go from the original plan that former Supervisor Scott had proposed to here we are today. But this is Water Resources' latest best effort to say, we think this might work, and now we're here to say, what do you guys think?
Great, thank you. I think funding is a good thing. I think funding is constantly an issue that we're talking about not having, so would we like to make a decision on the advisory, recommendation on that now? Okay, I'll make a motion to, as long as there's, what was that? Okay, good call. Any public input on that first? If so, just take the mic and let us know what you think. All right, I don't see any public input on it. All right, I'll make a motion to recommend the approval of the reallocation of those funds. Do I have a second?
I second.
All right. Thank you for the description.
Huh?
Yeah. We have a vote. Well, I think we can do
And I
a
think we
motion to
vote with
consent.
everybody in the room, right? 'Cause they're all
No,
here. So, yeah. So, I'll second, but then could we have a show of hands or a vote for a recommendation on the move to direct the Water Resources staff to reallocate the District 4 discretionary cannabis tax of $65,000 for Highland Springs?
All in favor? Yeah. Aye.
All in favor? Aye. Hold your hands up so we can get a number.
It's like everyone in the room.
I think it's just unanimous, right?
Yeah, we put number, I read it. Great, thank you. And then I think the next, we missed it on the agenda, is public comment for the next agenda item. We missed adding it. We'll throw it in here. So if there's any public comment, I just want to remind you guys, there's 2 minutes for public comment. If anyone has anything,
Pertaining to
Yeah.
agenda items?
it is supposed to pertain to the agenda items.
Yeah. Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Thank you. All right.
Any public comment?
With,
Sure.
sure, take the,
Margot Kambara, and I live in the Kelseyville planning area. My question is, so what is the procedure to request an agenda item be,
Added to
be
the
co-
agenda?
Yeah,
Yeah, you can reach out to one of us, or we have an email. It's, what is it?
It's Big Valley Advisory Council, basically just the name @gmail.com.
Yeah. We'll add it to our agendas for future, so you guys can see it posted on our Facebook page. We have to post our agenda on the,
72 hours before the meeting.
yeah.
So between that time frame, we should,
Well, we have to get it to the county 5 days
Yeah.
prior, so we're actually on the 5th. I think it's the 5th of the month, the 4th or 5th of the month, that first Friday. If any additions come for the agendas, they got to be in by that Friday so we can post it to the county so they can get it posted on their website. Our bylaws say 72 hours prior to, but we need to follow the county's posting requests. Absolutely.
Mhm.
Yep, just shoot us a note if you want us to add something to the agenda. Any other public comment, questions?
Okay, great.
Great.
With that, I'm going to adjourn this meeting. It's now 6:33. And I thank everybody for coming. We'll do this again next month. Again, just a reminder that we have that 72-hour timeline, but if you could give us some extra time, at least that weekend before, that'd be great. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.